J.J. Watt getting released, kind of how great his career was in Houston, and where do you think he should play next year?
Yeah, so I think this was trying to be nice for the Texans. They've had some bad PR for this whole offseason, even in the regular season too, right? So I think releasing J.J. Watt is the bare minimum they could have done, so they can let him go where he wants. I'm sure they could have gotten picks for him. I don't think they would have been high picks, but they could have got mid-round picks or some compensation, right? So I think that was good on them to let him go and choose where he wants to go. I think this was the writing on the wall. If they weren't going to trade him, he was going to get released or go wherever he wants. I think his Twitter's been very active about anti-Texans, so that was there. His career, we could talk about that a little bit. One of the best defensive linemen I've ever seen. I'd say him and Aaron Donald are probably the top two, at least in our lifetimes. Multiple defensive player of the years. I think he's the closest to winning an MVP for a defensive player in that 2014 season, I believe it was, when Aaron Rodgers won it. I think if the Texans make the playoffs, I think he has a good argument to make it, but he wasn't quite valuable enough as they didn't even make it. So there's that. And then the team that I think he will go to, everyone says the Steelers. I just don't see it. I know the brother, basically the only reason would be because of his brothers, right? But they don't have the cap, and they already have a really, really good interior D-line. I want to say my Packers, because we could use some interior D-line help. He's from Wisconsin. We could have taken him in the first round when he did go, or traded up for him. I know he'd love to be here. I don't think that's possible either. And here's a wild card that this team is interested, and I think they could make a move, is going to be the Buffalo Bills. They could use some bigger guys up front, some more star power on defense. I think he'd help them a lot. I think he would help them a lot. I think they should go for him. Stephon Diggs tweeted out that he wants them to get him. I think they need to go get J.J. Watt and help the Bills with their Josh Allen rookie contract years and push for the Super Bowl.
Okay, so that was a lot, right, to break down. And I 100% agree with you. When you're talking about J.J. Watt and his career in Houston, I think that we're talking the second best defensive player of my life. Maybe Von Miller comes close, but J.J. Watt's right there. To me, he was like what Aaron Donald is right before Aaron Donald. In my opinion, Aaron Donald's the best defensive player I've ever seen. I didn't see Reggie White. I didn't see Lawrence Taylor. I didn't see all those guys. I think J.J. Watt would be right there. It's J.J. Watt or Ed Reed. It's right there, neck and neck. He was that good. One of the greatest players of all time. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. You can't say much. And I know that, and for me, in terms of the Texans PR, I don't think they can save face. So I think that they had, there was no win here. They could lose more by trading J.J. Watt and having him be unhappy, but there's no win here by releasing J.J. Watt. They just look okay. So now we get into what team he should play for next year. The two teams that have been thrown out are the Packers, right, and the Steelers. To me, the Steelers just don't make sense in terms of money. Yeah. And in terms of interior D-line, it's because people don't realize that Stephon Tuitt and
Cam
Hayward have been two of the better interior defensive linemen in the NFL for the past 5-6 years. They're really, really good. So while J.J. Watt would be really – and Tyson Alualu played really well for them last year. So they don't need any more bodies in there. Yeah. And so then Green Bay, I love the idea of Green Bay. I just don't know how Green Bay makes it work with the money. I know Preston Smith, letting him go will help a little bit, but it's not like Green Bay is just swimming in cap space to make it happen. So then we get to teams like you mentioned, and to me, there's three teams that I'm interested to see get him and make it happen. There's four, actually. The first one I'm going to throw out is New England. I think that New England is the kind of player that they would make a run at, and I think J.J. Watt would be able to be really good for them. I know his wife lives in Chicago, but I'm not going to say the Bears. I think Akeem Hicks is one of the better interior defensive linemen in the NFL. I think he's really underrated. I don't think the Bears really need him. The second one, and I think this one makes the most sense in terms of cap space, is Indianapolis. Indianapolis, again, this is the kind of player that they covet, a veteran, proven player that they can bring in. They did it with Justin Houston, right? And I think J.J. Watt would be similar, though Chris Ballard was involved in drafting Justin Houston. And then the third and fourth are the ones you mentioned. And both the Titans and the Bills are over the cap slightly right now. So you mentioned the Bills. I think he would be a great fit. The Bills need a interior defensive lineman, right? They need an interior presence. I really think that Star Lotulelei opting out really affected their defense, and I think J.J. Watt would be humongous for them next to Ed Oliver and with Star Lotulelei coming back. And then the other team is the Titans, and it's because Mike Vrabel coached him. He was the DC in Houston for a year. I'm sure there's a relationship there, and the Titans really need someone next to Jeffrey Simmons. The loss of Jarrell Casey hurt them. The Titans actually just need anybody that can get pressure on the quarterback. And so I think that Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry and J.J. Watt would be really solid, and he would be really huge for Tennessee. So those would be the four that I would kind of look at and say, yeah.
Okay, and now I have a question for you. What do you think he will sign for? So he's been injured a lot over the last few years, to say the least, right? He hasn't been able to play full seasons. It's a down year for Cap, and he is over 30, and he hasn't shown his level of production that he did in the early 2010s as he has the last few years. How long do you think he'll get a deal for? Do you think there will be a lot of guaranteed? How much cap do you think is going to be eaten up by his contract?
I don't think he's going to get a big deal, and I don't think he's looking for a big deal. At this point, I think he's going to be best used as a rotational type player. And I think the big difference between him and another guy who was a Hall of Fame level player, not as good as JJ, but switched teams around this age, was Calais Campbell. I think the big difference is that JJ Watt has a lot more wear and tear on his body in terms of big time injuries with his pectoral. I'm pretty sure JJ Watt had a back injury. So, and Calais Campbell didn't have those things, but I think JJ Watt will be somewhere like 2 years, 18 million, 2 years, 20 million, something like that, $10 million a year. I don't know the guaranteed number, but I don't think JJ Watt himself, he's made so much money. I don't think he cares about the money. I think he cares about the situation, the fit, and trying to get the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl is the only thing on his individual resume that's missing. He's got every accolade that any player wants. Yeah.
I'm with you. So my thought process was it'd probably be cheaper, even a little cheaper than that. I wouldn't be surprised if, so the way I view it is that he'll either take like a 1 year deal that's like 12 to 15 million that has a lot of incentives, probably with playing time, winning games, playoff games and whatnot, or he'll take like a 2 year deal that's like 15 to 16 million. Maybe the first year is guaranteed and the second year is not guaranteed, but it'll be a shorter deal where the team has like an out if he gets a ACL or a career ending injury or even season ending injury. So I think those are probably the two most likely outputs. And then I did want to say with the Packers, so I know we touched on it a little bit, right? So they're kind of a little over the cap right now. They can get it down. But here's the thing. This could be the signing for them that is like that Julius Pepper signing they had a few years ago, where they brought him in 3 year, I think it was like $27 million a year. And he was like a leader, one of those veterans who's maybe a little past their prime, but still a good locker room presence. So that would be the argument for the Packers, but I don't think it'll happen, unfortunately. I think it'd be awesome having J.J. Watt. You can't double him and Za'Darius every time. And then Rashawn Gary would also eat, but it's more of a dream than a most likely reality.
Yeah, I think that the J.J. Watt to the Packers, I would like that. And I think that releasing Preston Smith still has them under the cap a little bit. So I don't know how they're going to fiddle with that. I'm sure they have a couple extra outs and stuff, but I think J.J. Watt would be phenomenal for the Packers. I think he's exactly what they need. They're missing size in their interior defensive line, which he would bring, and two, they're missing interior pass rush, even though Kenny Clark had a very good season. They need somebody else, and J.J. Watt would bring that. I think the biggest problem I would say with J.J. Watt is I think with Green Bay, he would be asked and he would have to be an every down player, which I don't know if that's the best way to utilize him at this point in his career.
Yeah, I'd imagine he probably would. They kind of lack talent for those 3-4 defensive ends that are in there. So that's Lancaster and Lowry. So if they cut Lowry, maybe draft a guy in the second or third round, get Lancaster and J.J. Watt. I would not be opposed. That sounds really good, but yeah, the moves would have to be made, and it all depends on the contract at the end of the day, right?